If you don't want teaching from the seats, you better teach from the lectern.
Business is messy and unpredictable.
Sometimes lonely.
So lonely.
So lonely.
And inspiration can often come from really weird places.
We pick up where the bullet point blogs and the highlight reels leave off.
We start with the stories. Welcome back to So Here's My Story. This is Jody.
I'm Elliot.
Today we actually end up talking about Facebook groups, interestingly, which is a great time to say if you haven't jumped into the Facebook group, you can find the links on our website at sohere'smystory.com or also on our Facebook page. So Here's My Story.
And you have a story.
I do.
All right.
Let's go. So here's my story. Any of you who were around in our first year were blessed with multiple Jody Jim stories.
Oh, is that what you call it now?
Yeah, blessed is one way to put it. There were often metaphors that I thought of at the gym that we use for episodes. And you may or may not have noticed that for about a 2-year period or a 1.5 year period, they just sort of disappeared. And that's not because I had some major restraint. It was that I just stopped going to the gym. And so anyway, as of this year, I'm like making health a priority. So I'm back on track doing these things. And one of the things that has been really working extremely well for me is intermittent fasting. Are you familiar with how this works? Okay.
A little bit, yeah.
It's basically stopping and starting eating at so you just eat in a smaller window of time.
Like an 18-hour period where you're not eating.
Well, it's funny you say that because this gets into the story ultimately.
Okay, so now shut up now.
Yeah, so I've been doing it off and on for about a year and a 1.5 years, and it worked really well for me last January and whatever. Anyway, here we're getting into the meat of the story. There is technically no reason that you need an app for intermittent fasting because it's literally, some people say you can just fast for 12 hours, but I don't understand that because that's not even missing a meal. But kind of the minimum is you fast for 16 hours. Fair enough. The minimum is like fasting for 16 hours, which is basically skipping breakfast or, whatever. A lot of people do like 18 or 20 hours. Some people do longer fasts, but not every day, whatever.
Okay.
Anyway, it's just stopping and starting. So you don't need an app, but I found this app last year that I really, really liked for a couple of just hysterically psychological reasons. One is once I hit that button to start my fast after dinner, if I'm like tempted to eat some things, even like a healthy thing or whatever, in my mind, before I was using the app, I would go ahead and eat the thing and be like, well, I'll just start my fast now. Well, I'll just start my fast now. Well, then it's later start, which means it's later the next day. And it's not good. So something about hitting that button, I wouldn't go back and hit the button and restart it. And it's got some cool little visuals that I found really inspiring and a lot of good information. So I don't know what possessed me to look, but I keep constantly getting these posts, these ads on Facebook and other places for this other app that promises to tell you exactly what kinds of foods you should be eating when you are out of your fasting window and all this stuff. And I don't know, maybe I was like, I don't know, I was in a very whatever state, but I went ahead and clicked through just to see what it was. And of course you take their quiz and then to get the results, you have to do this thing, which I was already a tiny bit annoyed by. This turns into sort of a rant, by the way. So
cool.
Your eyes just physically perked up. You're like, I'm not with you on this story. Does it become a good story?
I love me by
It turns into a rant.
Yeah.
So anyway, to make a very long story short, I paid whatever it was, like $20 or something to you get like a year or whatever, because I wanted to see the next bid and it seemed compelling. Well, not only was that really disappointing, but here's the abyss that I found myself in. You automatically can join this Facebook group that they have. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Maybe tips from other intermittent fasters, whatever. It became this. I was joking with Christy, who does our show notes, I said, here's a little peek into my world. Like I joined this thing. Now keep in mind, you don't even really need an app. These people, everyone in this group has paid to use an app because the app I was using was free. And then I was spending an embarrassing amount of time course correcting people's, there's really bad information. There's no support from the app in the group.
Really?
They're not putting out very good information. The app will only let you choose 3 versions of fasting, and they make it seem like if you choose the 16-hour, it is from 7 to 12 or whatever it is. And so people are asking these questions. Well, what happens if I do 6 to 11? Will that mess everything up? I'm like, no, that doesn't mess everything. And it's wildly irresponsible because they're creating all this extra need that isn't even there, but then they're not even tending to the need.
Yeah.
And I'm not even kidding. I actually had to leave the Facebook group because I just was so upset by how poorly informed these people who are paying for an app. And then it's whipped up all this extra nonsense. And so there's two interesting things to this and why I wanted to put it out there for an episode. And you may take it in a completely different direction. One, that aspect of your responsibility as a business.
Yes.
Hats off to them, I guess, for getting people to pay for a thing that they don't even need. I mean, we won't even start there. But then if you do, what responsibility do you have to actually really deliver and inform and guide in a responsible way? There's also, I think, maybe some of the things that they have done, I think were maybe to try and simplify fasting for people, but they've actually made it more complicated. And then the third one that I also found interesting was my own sort of prioritization or whatever you want to call it of having to step back from a thing and saying like, is this where I was put on the earth to is the work that I am here to do is to educate people who are intermittent fasting, across the globe. I told Christy, I said, I was fighting that battle, like charging those windmills as if, I was fighting, systemic racism or something. It was just this like daunting battle to inform these folks in the group. Anyway, so there's my story.
Well, so the first thing that occurred to me, because there are a number of jumping off points here. The first thing that occurred to me is when you said that the options are restricted, so you must, in your example, you must start fasting at 7 and then move on. And I'm thinking, but they're not meeting their people where they are.
No.
They're not responding to what may be the knowledge gap. They're not giving them options. They're not making allowances for different lifestyles. They're saying, here's the box that we built and you have to fit into that.
Yeah, there's at least 4 ones that I responded to of people who work the night shift. And they're like, well, I guess I can't fast if I work. I'm like, no, that's not how it works.
But here's the thing. If the business decided that they were going to make a choice, that our people, the ones that we want to work with, are the ones that can start there, that are interested in intermittent fasting or in it for the long haul, will pay $20 or whatever it is, will be active in the Facebook group, and will start the fast religiously at 7. Then they made that decision. You may question their business model and all that stuff, but they made the decision, and then they have an obligation to make that filter known to everybody else.
Yeah, like if these times don't work for you, you're not our people.
You're not our people. And then then nobody walks in uninformed.
Right. And the bummer about that one specifically is, I have done a lot of research on it over the past year or two. And, Christy's wildly informed about this stuff. There is no reason, because we've talked before about setting a certain bar. Like if you want to work with my company, if you want to work with me, you have to know. And I make this very clear. I am not someone who comes with an off the shelf step 1, step 2, step 3. I make that super clear. That is a choice I'm making for reasons that matter. There is literally zero scientific reason or any reason why fast, like the whole point of fasting is just simply like, do you have food in your belly? Or, are you putting food in your belly? Are you not putting food in your belly? So I get irritated.
But that's the scientific part of it. But the emotional part, there are people out there who, respond very negatively to what I've heard called the curse of options, right? And they want to be told, look, I realize that there may be no difference from starting the fast at 4 in the afternoon or 7 in the evening, maybe no difference. But I need to lose weight or to get healthy or whatever it is. And I want you to tell me, you give me a program, I will follow it to the letter. So if you tell me to start at 6:45, I won't start at 6:46. I'll start at 6:45.
I get it.
And if that's who you're appealing to, if you say,
don't try and talk me out of being angry with these people, Elliot.
But my anger from them would stem from another reason. Which is that if they made that decision, I don't think they did, but if they made that decision, then you have an obligation to let people self-screen. And then if you put everything out there and these people are like, I'm right there with you. 6:47 is when I'm starting my fast and I'm going to follow like a military. I'm going to follow your orders, period. And then that's it. That's what they're in for. And you deliver exactly what you promise. But if you just say, join us, we're going to introduce you to this great way to be healthy. And then they have a screen, but they fail to put it out there, and they raise more questions and they instill more angst in their audience, their paying audience.
Which is the last level of just where my rant is crazy ranty is if I had a product or a service or whatever, and I had a room, let's call it, this Facebook group where my paying people were consistently having the same problem, how do they not have feel some responsibility for them to be weighing in, say like, hey, because the only two, they have longer options, but at the beginning you can choose like 16-hour or 20-hour. So people are asking questions. Well, I don't really feel like I need to eat, but I can't go all the way to 20. So I'm sticking with 16. And I'm like, no, there's actually massive benefits at like 17 or 18 hours. And I was explaining a lot of this, but they should be doing that. Like what it felt like was wandering into like a room of orphaned children. And when I left, I was like, I am abandoning you with no adult to help you understand. Not that I have some sort of God complex there, but they should be. It was like, you know what? It's exactly like what happens when there's an organization with a leadership vacuum. Like rumors start and other people feed those rumors and validate those rumors and build on those rumors.
Well, right, because nature abhors a vacuum.
Yes.
Right? So if there's a vacuum, then people rush to fill it with anything. Could be garbage, could be wisdom, could be whatever. But the other thing that strikes me is that the stakes here are pretty high. Meaning that, I know you're thinking EAKS. Don't give me that look. But the stakes are high because this is somebody's health, right? So a number of people may be joining this because it's a last resort. I've got to get healthy. I'm really overweight. There's a lot of angst over health and body image and all that to begin with. If this were a dynamic where people were just trying to figure out whether to go with a blue or a black pen,
right,
then the stakes are lower. And so if you fill the room with orphans and you don't give them guidance on the blue or the black ink,
and then they're frustrated.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I see what
but
you mean.
it doesn't really in the grand scheme of things matter. But here you've taken something that's deeply personal, highly important to your audience, and then you abandon them.
Okay, here's a weird metaphor. It's like a room full of orphans all going through puberty, and there's no adult there to like say, nope, that's normal. Okay, that's actually not normal. We should take you to a doctor. Like there's no one there guiding this process. And the frustration that people were having, they have an option for a 12-12 fast, which I think is perfectly fine to dabble into it. If you are somebody who eats 24 hours a day, eats till 1 o'clock in the morning, and then the first thing you do is put food in your mouth, that's probably a great start. And I don't doubt that some people lose weight on a 12-12, A, because it probably eliminates late night snacking. B, a lot of those people are also doing like keto or something when they are eating and they're exercising more. So I don't think the 12-hour fast in and of itself, nothing has scientifically happened in your body at that point that would promote weight loss. And you still have 12 hours to do a lot of really bad decisions about what you're eating. But I would see these.
I can pack a lot of bad decisions into 12 hours.
I know, right? Like I have packed a lot of bad decisions into way less than 12 hours. So that was one of the things that bothered me most was the people who were like, I've been doing 12-12 for 2 weeks and I haven't lost a pound. I was like, that's because you're like that. Come on, Karen, like
Brenda,
can you wait till 10 to eat? Like, it sounds like I'm being mean and judgmental, but I kept getting angrier and angrier at the lack of responsibility for the thing. And again, paid. If it was a free app, it would be so much easier for me to walk away from. But I just became this weird, like soldier of justice.
Well, but it is all around expectations. But before I get into that, I do want to give a shout out to the possibility of a title for the episode of Orphans Going Through Puberty. Because I was just so
I'm sure
taken
our
with
SEO
this.
will just pick
and
that
I'm
right
sure
up.
we go through the roof because so many people are out there searching.
Googling
yes,
orphans.
Absolutely. And we're the place to get the lowdown on that.
Also, punk band name, Orphans in Puberty.
But I think it really boils down to expectations on both sides. But one of the things that we had talked about was that this is a paid app. So I'm wondering what your rant would have been, or if there would have been a rant, had it been a free app, meaning that the expectations for many people is, it's a free app. I spent nothing on it.
Yep.
And so if I get some good information, great. If I don't, that's fine. And even though $20 is not going to be the difference in keeping the lights on or food in your kid's belly or anything like that, but you paid. And I'm wondering what the difference would be to you.
Well, so interestingly, I knew, and this may have colored my view even more, like it sent me into that group already irritated. I knew there was trouble, or not trouble, but that this wasn't just an inherently, I don't know, not that companies or people who do this is inherently not on the up and up, but it just is never a good sign to me when you do buy a thing and immediately you get not one, not two, but three things that are like, wait, before you go, do you want to get this one time? And I was like, no. And they're like, but wait, before you go, would you like this access to like blah, blah, blah? I was like, no, thanks. And immediately they tried to sell you a bunch of other things before you have even gotten your quiz results, seen the app, gone into the Facebook group. If you're already trying to sell me things before when I just paid you and I haven't even gotten any service yet, I'm immediately irritated because I feel it gives me an immediate yuck feeling. Had it been free, I think, well, one thing that I would have done is I already often reference the app I use with pictures just as demonstration, because you can see part of what I like about it is like, as you reach the 16th hour, the 12th hour, and then the 16th hour. And then if you go further, like the 19th, there are these little icons that say like, oh, hey, now you're in heavy ketosis or whatever. And it's been, it's one of the reasons I like it. Cause sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just cut it here and eat this cookie that wherever I am or something. And I'll see like, oh, I'm only an hour away from, or, I just went into heavy ketosis. I don't want to blow that on a cookie. And it just helps me make better decisions. Yeah. And, so I've shown that sometimes also to visually show people that at 12 hours, it's just beginning. And so even if you can go 13, you probably get better results than, because one other thing, everyone wants to have all these conversations about the right things to eat when they do eat. And not that doesn't matter, but that's not the point of fasting. Like is one other point that I thought had an interesting metaphor. Because one of the last things I weighed in on somebody with was that. I said, instead of losing yourself in, she's asking questions about what she should eat. I was like, you're going to get 57 answers from 57 different people, and that will be great information for what works for them. But before you even go there, the whole point of fasting is it's very simple, and you just don't eat for a period of time, and you would get such better results if you just every day go 15, 20 minutes longer, and in a week or two, you're at 16 or 17 or 18. Just focus on that. And then if it's not working for you, then tweak what you're eating in your eating hours, but it's all upside down. And I lost my train of thought. Oh, but I would share that regularly. If it was free, I probably would have shared it even more, because I did feel a tiny bit like one of the admins at some point, if there are admins, because I never saw them, might pull me aside and being like, are you trying to are you a plant from the other app? Because I was so often talking about the other app. But I don't know how I would have felt. I think I probably still would have been irritated, just because I don't know, if you start a thing, if you host a party, you need to make sure people are taken care of. And I do have a thing about just bad information.
Well, it's the information, it's interesting because at, the place where I go for public speaking and mentoring, when we teach people who are coming in, one of the things that they have is their mantra or their pledge. And what part of their pledge is, I will be a performer and not a critic. And what they meant by that and what they tell us is look, we have this curriculum, and you're here, you're learning the curriculum. But your obligation as a student is to learn that, use it to develop your people, and also to be supportive of others. Mm-hmm. But the cardinal sin here is, as a student, you hear somebody else do their speech or their thing, and you come up to them and say, hey, that was great. I had a really good idea for what you should do. Or you start replacing our curriculum with yours, or you're viewing it through your lens, and you're saying, here, I had an idea, and I was thinking, and all of that may be well-meaning, but what you're doing is you are now becoming your own school.
I call that teaching from the seats.
Yeah. And so they have a number of rules, but one of the rules that is very, very central to their philosophy is no teaching from the seats, which is a great
which is
way
what
to say
I feel like I'm doing.
And that's what you were doing. And the reason that you were doing it is not because, as you said at the beginning, not because you had this overwhelming desire to be a nutrition and fasting or whatever coach, but because there was so much bad information, because they failed to provide the structure. If you don't want teaching from the seats, you better teach from the lectern.
Yes. Ooh, bum, bum, bum. It's like a mic drop moment there.
Done.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. There's no one teaching from the lectern. And it's funny because I literally had that thought because I hate people teaching from the seats. Nothing drives me more crazy than if I'm at an event and there's a panel. I think we've even talked about this, and people raise their hand to ask a question, and instead of asking a question,
it's not a question.
They pontificate to sort of show off that they know things or something.
In my experience,
yes. What I find works really well. And they say it just like that, like Thurston Howell or something.
Because you only teach obnoxious British people, apparently.
Apparently. And it just always drives me crazy. And I can feel myself doing that. And I'm like, don't be that person, Jody. But it's funny. I even had that thought. I was like, but there's no teacher here. There's no one in this room who's going to come. I really did have the admin thought. Like, some admin's going to yell at me for promoting another app. I was like, what admin? I haven't seen a single admin in here weigh in or give guidance or post things, like post either motivation or like post your wins today, or even like, here's I've seen a lot of questions on nutrition when you are eating, here's a handy guide, or none of that.
But, and as soon as you let it go, so just to close the loop on HPS, the speaking place, they have their own closed community. And if I went on there and said, David, I have a great idea for your speech, here's what you should do, they would remove that post instantly. They have people looking for that because there's, they adhere to what I've heard from a number of people. You teach what you tolerate.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
So if you just tolerate, like you're no admin in that Facebook group, if you just tolerate the teaching from the seats, then you're allowing it. Then people are like, oh, that's the way this group works. Now, of course, I'm a dissatisfied customer because I'm like, that's not what I paid for.
Right. And had I paid for any more, honestly, had I paid any more for it than I did, it's not worth the effort to go get. I would want my money back because the reason I clicked it, and I'll have to watch that ad again. I will screenshot it. I swear it said you get this like customized something about this quiz you took that then it would tell you exactly something. I don't remember what it was, but it sounded interesting and compelling. I never got any whatever was that was the fascinating thing. Whatever, you put all this information into the quiz. Then you go download the app. And when you do it, you have to create your login. You download the app, you go in. None of that information is represented there. I still had to put in my height and my age. And so there's no correlation. There's no value. It's just a teaser that they use. It feels like one giant scam, honestly, of all of it. It's like a big pile of all the best yet slimiest marketing and sales tactics there are, all in one big pile, and there's nothing under the pile.
Well,
there's no pony in that, whatever that expression is.
There's no pony in there.
There's no pony in there.
That gets back to the expectations and real fast, because I know we're at the end, it cuts across industries. I worked with a graphic designer that was a branding expert. It was really good. She wound up being terrific. But one of the things she wanted me to do, this is a while back, is fill out a vision board about what, images of certain things, whatever. And I was skeptical about it, but I'm like, okay, this is her process. Fine. I bought in. I'm going to follow her process. I did. I filled it out, but I never heard anything more about that again. And, but there's an expectation.
Like,
when they ask me for interaction, whether it's you're filling out your things or my vision board or your retirement profile or your whatever it is, it's not just an engagement tactic. It ratchets up the expectations that, yes, there's going to be something customized and you're going to listen to me.
Right.
When in reality, a lot of people just say, great, I got your engagement. That's a marketing technique. And now
it really works.
It really works. So please tell me your name and the state you live in. And I'm like, but I just confessed my deepest, darkest fears. And you don't know that I live in Pennsylvania.
I know. Just everything about it. And I do think, and I know we have to wrap here, but it was truly the difficulty with which I left the group was comical. Like I still think about it sometimes. I'm like, it's very, very funny about how invested I got in wanting to right the wrongs that were happening in there. And I was like, okay, Jody, you already have like an overwhelming to-do list. This is probably not where you should be investing your time.
Right. But where you should be investing your time, and where I know you do, is in our Facebook group, which we actually do care about. We do. It made me feel a lot better about it, because I always have more I want to do in there. So I always feel bad that we're not doing even more. Yeah. It's like seeing a really bad parent out somewhere and your kids looking at you and being like, you're a really good mom. Like that's sort of, I was like, okay, we're not so bad. This is it could be a lot So
worse.
To our listeners, if you do have suggestions, even rants about our Facebook group, then please, but I'd rather take the suggestions and the engagement, because we kind of find that fun.
Exactly.
So that's our story.
But the discussion doesn't have to end here.
No, it does not.
In fact, we don't want it to.
No, we don't.
That is why we actually have our private Facebook group,
which we started to make sure that we could get your comments, your rants, your thoughts,
your stories.
You
can find links to that group, as well as show notes and links to subscribe via email, and how to find us just about anywhere you can possibly find podcasts at sohere'smystory.com.
And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at SHMS Podcast.
And since we know it takes a village.
Yes, it does.
We'd like to thank our village, our super talented, incredibly patient team.
And occasionally snarky team.
Yeah, but in the best of ways.
In the best
Lovingly
of ways.
Snarky.
Yes.
Good mockery.
So a huge shout out to the people who actually help us produce our show. First, our sound engineer, Tom Hansen.
Thanks to Christy Schmier for our brilliant show notes and all the other fantastic writing she does for us.
And to Taylor Mathauer for doing just a little bit of everything.
Including wrangling us.
Which
is no small feat.
No, it's not.
This is Jody Hume.
And I'm Elliot Wagenheim.
And you've been listening to So Here's My Story.